Donald Trump's presidency has been interpreted in sharply different ways, with opinions often reflecting partisan perspectives rather than a unified reading of the facts. While some have hailed his administration as transformative, others have regarded it as deeply damaging. In reality, the record is complex, with both achievements and shortcomings across national security, economic policy, and cultural debates. From the outset, Trump approached foreign affairs with a transactional mindset. He rejected the idea of isolationism, instead framing international relations as a series of negotiations designed to maximize American leverage. Access to the United States market, the world's largest, was treated as a key bargaining chip. His administration urged NATO members, particularly in Europe, to contribute more to their own defense. He sought to influence Turkey's position in global politics through both incentives and pressure, while his dealings with Saudi Arabia focused on energy, arms, and regional security rather than shared political ideals. Perhaps the most ambitious foreign policy objective was recalibrating relations with China. Rather than advocating for complete disengagement or permanent confrontation, Trump floated the idea of a managed relationship based on spheres of influence. Critics warned this approach underestimated the risks of strategic miscalculation, while supporters argued it represented a pragmatic adjustment to a changing world order. The success or failure of this effort, like Richard Nixon's opening to China decades earlier, will likely be judged over many years. Economically, Trump positioned himself against the long-standing consensus favoring unrestricted trade, minimal border controls for goods and people, and the assumption that China's economic rise would be peaceful. He argued that these policies had accelerated the decline of the American middle class. His administration's strategy combined elements of past Republican economic orthodoxy with more populist measures: lower taxes, energy expansion through deregulation and increased drilling, and the use of tariffs as leverage rather than as an ideological commitment. Supporters saw tariffs as a necessary corrective to trade imbalances and a tool for protecting domestic industries. Critics feared retaliation from trading partners and doubted the long-term effectiveness of such measures. Reducing the size of the federal bureaucracy was another priority, not only to save costs but to minimize resistance to policy changes. Trump's vision relied on private sector growth filling the gaps left by a smaller government role, a concept embraced by his base but criticized by those who viewed it as favoring the wealthy and undermining protections for working Americans. On cultural issues, Trump's presidency became a focal point for debates about national identity, free expression, and the pace of social change. His administration frequently challenged what it described as political correctness, targeting policies and cultural trends it argued were driven by a small, elite minority out of touch with mainstream values. Topics ranged from diversity programs and corporations to policies affecting athletes and gender identity. For supporters, this stance represented a defense of traditional values and a pushback against perceived overreach by cultural institutions. For opponents, it risked deepening societal divisions and marginalizing vulnerable communities. Either way, it became a defining feature of his political brand, as central to his presidency as any trade negotiation or foreign policy initiative. One of the underlying themes of Trump's time in office was the rejection of pre-existing political orthodoxies. His administration contended that the strategies in place before his election, whether in dealing with global rivals, sustaining economic growth, or managing cultural change, were not producing desired outcomes. This belief justified a disruptive approach, even when the risks were high. However, disruption did not guarantee success. The proposal to divide geopolitical spheres with China could falter if trust between the two nations breaks down. Tariffs might harm more industries than they help if trading partners respond with their own restrictions. Cultural policies intended to rally supporters could alienate large portions of the population, entrenching divisions instead of resolving them. The ultimate test for any presidency lies in results that endure beyond a leader's term. For Trump, these results will be measured by whether his national security strategies contribute to global stability, whether his economic policies raise living standards, and whether his cultural agenda fosters cohesion or deepens fractures. These outcomes will take time to fully assess, and interpretations will likely remain polarized. In the meantime, Trump's presidency stands as an example of governance that sought to replace gradual adaptation with bold, often controversial shifts. The three pillars of his administration: foreign policy rooted in transactional leverage, economic policy mixing market principles with protectionist tools, and a cultural agenda challenging prevailing norms, created a political framework unlike that of his recent predecessors. As history continues to evaluate his term, one conclusion is already clear: Trump's approach was neither conventional nor cautious. It aimed to change course in areas where many believe the country was drifting or declining. Whether that course leads to renewal or regret is a question the future will answer.